Let's get into it. Coach Colin news. Man, Kaitlin Collins, my least favorite interviewer in the world. My least favorite, now this is saying a lot, my least favorite CNN personality. That's saying a lot because they're already all the way down here. You can't even see my hand anymore. And then on top of that, she's on the lowest rung of that whole thing. Rather listen to Anderson Cooper talk about whatever it is that Anderson Cooper talks about. Never watch him, but I'd be willing to instead of watching Kaitlin Collins. But today, I had to watch an interview she did with Bill Barr. It's very odd that she's sitting down with Bill Barr. I think she thought, because of his past with Trump, that he was going to be a little more agreeable to the things that she had to say and the things that she was asking. But even Bill Barr, someone who does not get along with Trump, and Trump has not the greatest things to say about him, which you're going to see in these clips, actually, even he realizes Trump needs to win this election. Even he is very firm and just, I'm supporting Trump. And of course, for someone like Kaitlin Collins, especially given how she treated Trump during their whole town hall, which was really a blessing given how much their ratings have plummeted. Donald Trump did them a solid favor, and she threw it in his face and was acting really, really, really rude with Donald Trump. So let's get into this whole clip. I'm going to show you 3 clips. One is where they're talking about Biden being a real threat to democracy and the lawlessness that's being allowed to spread. Another one is them, or her, Kaitlin, trying to shame Bill Barr for being a Trump supporter. Then Bill Barr actually throws the policies at her and talks about how Biden's unfit. And then the last one is where she just says, okay, are you seriously going to vote for this person who did this and did that and did that? And Bill stands his ground. Definitely. Let's get into this first clip. Listen to this. Hopefully it's not too fast. Oh, of course I already have it on double speed. Let me slow that down for you guys. Let's go.
The Republican nominee.
Or Biden may not be their Democrat.
So you would vote for another Democrat if a different Democrat was on the ticket?
It's hard to imagine that this party, the Progressive Democratic Party, would nominate someone I would support.
Yeah, I know you disagree with him, but I have to ask you about something that Trump posted about you this week, because he responded in response to you saying you'd vote for the Republican ticket. Wow, former AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud in our country, has just endorsed me for president, despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. It's classic Trump. What's the question?
What's your response?
Well, I mean, obviously, what I said was that I'm very disappointed that this country is stuck with this choice between 2 people who I don't think either of them should be president of the United States. But given that binary choice, I feel I have to choose Trump.
But he's mocking you.
So it's not about me. I think that I've said this all along. If faced with a choice between 2 people, neither of which I think should be president, I feel it's my duty to pick the person who I think would do the least damage to the country. And I think Trump would do less damage than Biden. And I think all this stuff about a threat to democracy, I think the real threat to democracy is the progressive movement and the Biden administration.
The Biden administration or President Biden himself?
Biden's support for the progressive agenda.
I think a lot of people hear that, and the case that we just talked about that went before the Supreme Court essentially, and say, how can you see that and say that Biden is a greater threat to democracy?
Well, where are we losing our freedoms? How are our freedoms being constrained? They're being constrained by the progressive government. And, democracy, especially, from the Anglosphere democracies, the Five Eyes and so forth, the threat's never been for autocratic government on the right.
But how specifically is Biden threatening democracy? The
threat to freedom and democracy has always been on the left. It's the collectivist, socialist, agenda. And that is where we're losing our freedom. Parents are losing the freedom to control their children's education. People can't speak their mind without losing their jobs and things like that. This is worse than the McCarthy era. Where is that coming from? It's not coming from the right.
Those two things that you just noted there, you believe are worse than a president of the United States trying to subvert the will of the people by overturning the results of the election?
I think a country, all the things together, like we're not enforcing our borders. We have open borders. We have lawlessness in our cities. We have regulations coming fast and furious, so telling people what kind of stoves they can use and what kinds of cars they have to drive, and eliminating cars and so forth. Those are the threats to democracy.
But President Biden.
But President Biden is a good man, and he's sleeping half the time. That means that half the time there's no chance of him doing worse than President Trump. There's polls that say it. The experts have told us. Don't do your own research, folks. They really cling to that, the subversion of peaceful exchange of power. They really cling to that. And all they're trying to say is, what about J6? What about J6? And it's like, I wish we could have an honest conversation. I wish CNN could have an honest conversation about J6. They had Van Jones crying while the whole thing was going on. You had Nancy Pelosi literally staring at a TV screen being like, I can't believe what's happening. I can't believe what's happening. Do you see this? Meanwhile, the police chief is trying to call her and the people who are below her saying, I need the National Guard. And they're like, finally, when he gets them on the phone, they're like, we don't like the optics. And then Nancy's staring at the screen like, oh my God, look what he's done. Look what he's done. Hey man, send the National Guard out. No. Took her and the people below her, 2 people below her, 6 hours to send out the National Guard while they watch the whole thing on TV screens. I wish we could have an honest conversation. I wish CNN could have an honest conversation about that whole peaceful transfer of power thing. Jeez. And everybody forgets about Hillary contesting the whole thing, calling him an illegitimate president into his half of the first year of his president, for 6 months, calling him an illegitimate president. Anyway, let's move on. But I just, they cling to it. That's the thing. Imagine if she didn't have that, right? Imagine every talking point that I just laid out was laid out and people could actually look at it for what it is. And it makes it cloudy. It makes it cloudy, and it makes it, also the fact that Trump was like, hey, you want like 1,000 National Guard just right off the bat in front of the Capitol? Saying it to Nancy. She's like, no, I'm fine. I don't need that. It's fine. Huh? When you actually have all the things laid out, you can't bring this up as his fault. You really can't. When you have all the facts, man, I need to do another video about that whole thing, because it's just not an honest take. And if they didn't have that, that's what I was saying. If they didn't have that to cling to, what would she have brought up about Trump? Think about it. What would she have brought up? Mean tweets? His temperament? Not statesmanly enough? What else would they have brought up? He's mean? What else? There'd be nothing else to bring up, man. Anyways, what he said really stands out. And a lot of people have to understand this, right? Removed himself. What Trump wrote in that Truth Social post was hilarious. But also, to him, reading that had to be like, well, there's Trump. He laughed it off, though. Laughed it off, and she said, oh, but he's mocking you. You have to vote the other way once somebody's mocking you. And he's like, it's not about me. So many people need to take that lesson in, that are just voting for Biden because of how Trump made them feel, or how a conversation with someone who supports Trump, where they didn't have the upper hand and didn't have their points in line, and they feel like they got owned in a conversation. They need to let all of that go and just look at what's happening and look at what happened throughout that time, throughout his first presidency, throughout Biden's first presidency. You just need to look at that Forget about what side you're on and be like, which one felt better? For me as a citizen, not for me as someone who's trying to virtue signal to my bosses at work, not for me trying to be this person who's this virtue signaler on Twitter. None of that stuff. Just how were things? That's why it's so easy for dudes in the hood. They're like, that's all that matters. But when you have the ability to have all these luxury beliefs about like, oh, it's just we got to do the right thing, vote for Trump or vote for Biden. We got to do the right thing. Yeah, no, he's just bad for democracy. You see the thing he said? Oh, he said a thing. What did he say about Haiti? Oh my gosh. I love vacationing in Haiti. How could he say that? The resorts are beautiful. When you have these luxury beliefs, you just automatically tend to fall to one side because you have these luxury beliefs. You're usually very left-leaning, democratic, and none of what Biden is doing right now is affecting you, and none of what Trump did that was really good felt like it affected you. It didn't feel like what he was doing was anything, right? Because if you live at the top of Beverly Hills, away from everybody, and there's security in a gate, well, you don't really. He says a bunch of things about the border, and you're just like, what? There's no problem. What do you mean? Let everybody in. Who cares? What's the problem? When you're in the hood, you're like, oh my God, there's so many people now. They're just intense, and they're all over the place, and they're peeing on my lawn, and they're not making that up either. I'm not just saying that to say that. That's really happening to people in Chicago. But those people, they don't have time for those luxury beliefs. It actually affects them. They feel it right away. That's why so many of them are jumping over to Trump. They have to. And then the last thing, I love that he brought up the progressive agenda. And if you don't know, that's just a politically correct way of saying the woke agenda. That's what he's really talking about. And Biden's embrace of that whole thing. And I love that he brought up socialist. He's just touching on cancel culture, all of these things. Everybody feels it. And I love that somebody who's actually in politics is willing to call it out and call it out in front of CNN and also in front of Kaitlin Collins. And again, she had nothing to say to that. Like with these interviews, that's why podcasting is so much better, or it's so much more well received, because she should have to answer to that. Like, what about that? But she doesn't have to. She just moves on. Moving on. I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get the soundbite I wanted there. Moving on. It's wild. Anyways, let's move on to the next clip, talking about trying to shame him for supporting Trump and Biden being unfit, touching on the policies that Trump had a little bit. Let's go. Actually, let me make sure it's not double speed. It's not. Wow.
Those things aren't equal. It feels like a false equivalency.
Well, I disagree. I think the country is much more susceptible to losing freedoms by the excesses of the left, and they have been steadily, and that's clear. People lose their jobs. Kids can't speak out in the classroom. They have to go along with what the professor says in order to get good grades and so forth. It's become like a Stepford nation being directed by the progressive elites.
Republicans are also trying to limit what could be said in the classroom. But I do want to ask you, because you're a lifelong Republican, I don't think it's a surprise that you don't like those issues that a lot of Republicans blame on Democrats. I think there's a question of how they're the same. But I want you to listen to what another lifelong Republican, Liz Cheney, said about your decision to vote for the Republican ticket in November.
Given what Bill Barr has said publicly about Trump's lack of fitness for office, I think that his assertion now that he's actually going to support Trump for office is indefensible, and was frankly disappointing to see.
She says it's indefensible.
Well, that's her view. That's her view. The fact of the matter is, as I said all along, I agreed with Trump's policies, and despite the media, the left-wing media's effort to portray it as a lawless administration, it wasn't. His policies were sound, and we had victories in courts, and we defended them. I think that Biden is unfit for office.
So you're basically saying that you are voting because you want the Republican policies?
Well, that's certainly part of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
But I also don't
Hold on. I'm glad you said that, because you told Geraldo Rivera last year You may want his policies, but Trump will not deliver Trump policies. He will deliver chaos and, if anything, lead to a backlash that will set his policies much further back than they would otherwise be. You're even acknowledging he can't accomplish those Republican policies.
What I was saying was, if you want Trump's policies, if you're MAGA and want to make America great again, the other candidates will be successful at that much more than he will.
But
for
that's
the reasons
not the other
I stated.
candidates. It's going to be Donald Trump.
That's right. I'm certainly not going to get anywhere near what I'd like under Biden. And Biden is not a great moral exemplar. Okay? And is he following the laws? Here he is giving away another round of forgiving student loans after he lost it in the Supreme Court, and he thinks he can get away. And he thinks he can get away with it by getting it out the door before the election.
But
he's not enforcing the law on the borders.
But those are policy differences that you disagree with. Trump, I remember also when border numbers were at an all-time high in the spring of 2019. So the idea that border chaos only happens under this administration is inaccurate. But I think people see that.
We had it under control because we had a program approved by the Supreme Court called Remain in Mexico that was fully lawful and had shut down the border, and he came in and lifted it.
That's so dishonest what she just did. First off, it's dishonest that she said, so you're saying this, and then he goes, yeah. You know, you could ask him a yes or no question. It goes, I'm glad you said that, and she had the quote written. So she directed him to that. That's this very much gotcha type of stuff. But then what she said here, you know, when Trump had his numbers at an all-time high, it might have been an all-time high for Trump, but it wasn't an all-time. She made it seem like she just said an all-time high, period. That is not true. And then on top of that, picture this, 500,000 people coming illegally during Trump's administration and 500,000 people coming in during 500,000 people coming during Biden's administration are two completely different things. Once you take away Remain in Mexico, you're letting them in. You have Remain in Mexico. You've had 500,000 people who have to remain in Mexico. That's a little different. That's much, much different, as opposed to a bunch of people just throwing away their passports and their nation's currency or wherever they were, coming into a place and just saying, this is my name. I have no identification. And they say, okay, you have an appointment in 4 years. Can you make it? They're like, sure. Where are you going? New York. And then they get to New York because they already have been giving money in a phone, and then they head to Chicago because they don't want the people to know where they are. They don't want any border type of people to know where they are at all. That's exactly what that dude who was making TikToks explaining to other illegal immigrants that when you come over, you can squat in people's houses and legally seize the house. Those were his words. That's exactly what he did. He was supposed to be in one place. He went to another place because he was trying to avoid ever getting caught. He was like, why do I ever have to do anything that they say? So it's very, very interesting that she's bringing that up. And then again, you know, I've said this many times, just like he did. Biden got rid of it. First day. Really, again, I keep saying this. Really hard to think that things aren't done by design when they're done like that. You just get in and you're like, I'm going to throw that thing away. What? Huh? What do you mean? I don't need it. We don't need it. Not with what we're doing. What do you mean? Wait, what are you doing? Well, hold on. Shh, Kamala, be quiet. Stand over there. What are you doing, sir? We're just trying to be loving, good people. That's all. Mr. Soros, can you please get out from behind the curtain? You too, Barack. What's going on here? All right, let's go. Joe, go to sleep. They got that guy under some kind of hypnosis, some kind. Okay, let's move on to the next clip where, Bill just has to double down on what he's saying in supporting Trump. And it's great to see. It's great to see because, a lot of people don't like this gentleman for reasons that, him and Trump came into such a clash. Didn't sit well with a lot of people. But even he knows he has to vote for Trump. He gets it. 100%. And it's not just, and the points that he's making, they're showing that it's not just the fact that he's a Republican that he's voting for Trump. He's bringing up good points that everybody should be aware of. You know, the border, the progressive agenda, the fact that it's not about you, it's more about the country, who's a better leader. These are the things that everybody should be considering. And it's classic that somebody who works for CNN doesn't understand. They're like, but hold on. I don't understand. I have the FBI in my ear. They're saying that this is not good, what you're doing. Huh? What do I do? Shut it down. Okay, I'll shut it down. You're a racist. That's how she should end this interview. She should just go, huh? What? Sorry? CIA? Yes? You're a racist and a misogynistic person, and you touched me. Anyways, guys, just end the interview like that. That's what she needs to do, because he's coming in strong in this interview, honestly. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I like what he has to say in this interview.
You don't see this as the definition of putting party over country?
No, not because unfortunately we're in a situation where the policy differences between the two parties are very, very vast. There's a huge gulf, and so in that,
but you're saying Trump can't achieve the policies.
I think he's going to have a much harder time achieving them.
But you're voting for So just to be clear, you're voting for someone who you believe tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, that can't even achieve his own policies, that lied about the election even after his attorney general told him that the election wasn't stolen. And as the former chief law enforcement in this country, you're going to vote for someone who is facing 88 criminal counts. Well,
look, the 88 criminal counts, a lot of those are, and I've said...
Even if 10 of them are accurate.
The answer to the question is yes. I'm supporting the Republican ticket.
But can you say that you're voting for Donald Trump? Because you're not saying his name. You just say you're supporting the Republican ticket.
I've said as between Biden and Trump, I will vote for Trump because I believe he will do less damage over the 4 years. I believe we're facing the most dangerous situation we've ever faced in the world. A lot of it invited by Biden's weakness. And to have Biden out there for the next 4 years, given all the threats we face, including handing the keys to the nuclear weapon to Iran, with a vice president like Kamala Harris, endangers the country. That alone should be reason to vote for the Republican ticket. But there are a host of other reasons. Our country is unraveling in many ways. The rule of law is unraveling.
So you want to put someone back in the position with immense power who you believe disrespects the rule of law?
Well, no, I think he will enforce the law, and we'll have greater safety in our cities.
There you go. Because that's what matters at the end of the day. You know, she has this disdain for Trump based on the company she works for, and he clearly has a disdain for Trump through the things that he said, like, you know, not everything, but little things here and there. Clearly has some kind of disdain. Trump clearly has a disdain for him, and he's still like, well, this is the person that we should definitely vote for. Obviously. And I just love the fact somebody who has 88 counts. What did she say? 88, 81? He's just like, well, let me tell you about, even if 10 are accurate, you went down pretty far. You were at almost 100 and you went down to 10. That shows that she knows what he was about to say when it comes to those cases. She understands that those cases are frivolous and nonsense. Right away. She was just like, even if there's one, okay? It's still a conviction of some kind, you know what I mean? Even if he has to pay a $10 parking ticket, you're still going to vote for Donald Trump. And he's like, yeah, there's 10 million people in the country and we don't know who they are. And there's pure lawlessness. It's so funny. I wish, you know, this guy's a straight dude. But I wish somebody would be like, but what about California? You're just allowed to do whatever you want in California. You know, people have their windows rolled down because they'd rather just get robbed peacefully than to come back to their car and have their windows smashed. Do you see what happened in New York just now? I don't even know if I can say it. Somebody used a belt like a lasso and threw it around someone's neck and drug them away. It was crazy. I can't even show that on here. Lawlessness. It's getting out of control. And it stems from the defund the police. And again, you go right back to what he brought up, and it's good that he brought it up. The progressive agenda, which is really just a woke agenda, which is really just socialism and communism. When you really break it down, it's just in a very small infancy, and it's just cute because it has green hair and big earrings and big glasses, and it goes to an Ivy League school. But when that grows up and there's enough of them, that turns into communism. It really does. But it's just funny that she brought that up. And it's weird that she thinks that he can't achieve his own policies. And I'll throw that at him as well. If he really said that quote, why would either of them think he can't achieve what he already achieved? What would stop him? He would just do the same things. Like, do you think he's not going to be able to remain in Mexico? What? It's there. It's not like it's gone. It's not like Biden crumpled it up and it's like, oh, there it is, it disappeared. You can just Biden right now could reactivate it if he wanted to. He would get slammed by his party and they'd hate him for it if he did, but he easily could. He won't, but he could. So for them to think that he can't make his policies happen again, he can't pick up where he left off, obviously have to clean up a very big mess, and he'd have to do that in a very fast time. I'm talking about like a year and a half. He'd have to clean up everything Biden did, and then he'd have to get started on what he wanted to achieve for those next 2.5 years, and he'd have to really make it happen. And he'd have to prep Ivanka or Barron or someone to take over, or Tucker. That's my fantasy pick for president, Tucker Carlson. That'd be great. You know what? At the very least, you'd get some great speeches. Okay? You get some fantastic speeches out of him. He'd probably be smart enough to make Candace Owens the press secretary. You'd get some good stuff out of him. And at least he would know to drain the swamp. He's been involved in the swamp for so long. At least he'd know it's time to drain it. That's just my fantasy pick. But yeah, that all in all, I find that interview, I don't think she was ready for what exactly happened. I think she thought that was going to be a lot easier. But honestly, when it comes to Kaitlin Collins, she never seems like she's ready for what's going on. It seems like she's usually just ready with some gotcha questions, and that's, if you do that kind of thing, that's fine. I don't respect it. Most people don't respect it, especially when you can just have a productive conversation. It's not like she didn't have the time. This is a 23-minute interview. She could have got some really, found some common ground and had a good conversation. But that's never what she's looking for. She's never anytime you see her standing across from anybody, it is either a straight propaganda fest or she is just straight on the attack. And honestly, that's not a respectful place to be in my opinion. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the whole thing in the comments. Did he bring up good points in regards to voting for Trump? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Other than that, I'm out.